Okay, so like I said, we've got a lot of ground to cover today, and my goal is to give you guys some new information in regards to science and goal setting and some actionable steps to actually crafting some very strategic goals and meeting those goals. So the first thing we want to do is talk about three things today. We're going to look at the science first, and then we're going to take into consideration personality traits. And finally, we're going to do some success strategies and practical application at the end. For those of you that went ahead and filled out that pre-participation survey, that was really insightful. So thank you for doing that. That really helped me custom tailor the content that we have today. Alrighty, as Paducah Young Professionals, I have a little bit of insight for you. As a professional that is a few decades down the road in their professional career, I just want to share something with you that I wished I'd realized quite a bit long ago. This thing that we're doing, this thing called life, it's a one-way street. And that sounds a little bit scary when you stop to think about it, because there's no reverse, there's no backing up, there's only forward, right? So if this thing called life is our one-way street, don't we want to find a way to make that the best possible, most meaningful life that we can, right? So here's the good news. You get to build the road. While it's a one-way street, taking control of building your road is a way to get the most out of your life and making the most meaningful, happiest, most productive, and of course there's twists and turns along the way, but being intentional about that is something that we're going to try and accomplish through goal setting, right? So we can build a road through haphazard decisions, bad choices, or I think the worst possible thing is default decisions. Have you ever heard that saying, decide by not deciding? And that's going to lead you down a path of a twisty, windy road that might not take you through that life that you want to take. Or you can be intentional about building your road, choosing good, solid resources, planning that road, and making well thought out decisions to create and build that life that we're all striving for. Now, you're already on that road because your participation here today, I believe that you really see the value in goal setting. And by setting really clear, intentional goals, you have the ability to create a life with more meaningful relationships, with meaningful and deep work, with financial security, and overall a life of happiness. Who doesn't want that? Now, as we go through it today, please unmute, chime in, raise your hand at any time, because I want you to ask questions and engage as much as possible, or jot down some questions there as we reach toward the end. So I have an analogy for you. If you look at this wheel, we can see the perfect circle. And in the middle is a hub, and outward projecting are those spokes. And notice how they all work together toward a collective strength of accomplishing, in this case, the paddle wheel, moving forward, moving that water. So if we use that analogy that the goal domains that we're going to consider today are the different parts of your life, they all come together to give us that collective strength in the wheel. And then if you look in the center, you're the hub. But what happens when there's a breakdown in one of those areas of life? It's definitely going to affect the entire output of the wheel. So that's why I wanted to call today 360 goal setting, because you can't really focus on one area of your life without it affecting another area of your life. Let me give you an example. Say you decided to make a career change. You decided that would be a good move for your family because you're going to have a raise that's going to help your financial security. You're going to be able to afford to buy another house, and it might improve your relationship with your spouse, and overall it's meeting your professional desires to make a career change and step up the ladder, right? But what happens if you find yourself 4 months down the road, your company got acquired, and you're suddenly interviewing for that job that you took? that is going to break several of those spokes in your wheel. So we want to really take an overall view of those different areas of your life and make sure that we don't ignore one and focus on the other. We're going to look at a collective view. So let's look at 3 basic types of goals. There are outcome goals, which means it's the center of your bullseye, and that's the result that we're looking for, the final outcome. I want to make the point that whatever that outcome is, you can take steps toward working toward that outcome, like getting a raise or a promotion, but ultimately an outcome goal is not something that you have complete control over. Leading to the outcome goals are performance goals. The performance goal is something that is, you have standard specifics. You set those standards for it. For instance, it's a way to measure whether you're meeting that goal. I'll give you an example in a minute. And finally, the process goals are those little habits and strategies that lead toward accomplishing the performance goals and ultimately lead to that desired outcome. Research has shown that if you pair these 3 things together when you're crafting your goal, that is going to help you achieve very successful goals and take you toward that next step you're striving for. So let me give an example on this. Say you want to get that promotion at work. That's your outcome. You can take steps toward getting that promotion at work, but ultimately that's not your final decision. A performance goal leading to the outcome would be you need to get a credential or a licensure to qualify for that job, that promotion. So that's very easy to measure. And the process goals that you set to get that licensure, to apply for the promotion at the job would be perhaps to set a study schedule and to give yourself sign up for that licensure. So you see how those all work together toward meeting the outcome of getting that promotion at work. Now, let's go ahead and pivot to something that I have found really very interesting in my research for today, and it is taking personality traits into consideration when we're crafting our goals and trying to meet those goals. If we take our personalities into consideration, there are definitely ways to help keep us on track and align those types of goals with how we're wired. There's been a lot of research in the last 3 years over this, so let's cover that for a minute. The research mostly has used the DISC personality assessment profile, and there are lots of different ways to characterize the way you're wired, your personality traits, such as the Enneagram, or in this case, the DISC assessment. But we're going to use the DISC assessment because that's where the research was tied to in today's content. So here we have 4 quadrants. And pretty much without taking an assessment, I can bet that you guys already know where you fall in that quadrant, whether you're dominant, influential, steady, or a compliant personality type. Let's go ahead and break down each one of these profiles and see how that relates to different goal setting. By the way, I thought this was pretty interesting. I was curious to see what kind of personality types signed up for today's seminar, and it was pretty even across the board with a little more C's than the rest, but I thought that was pretty even split. So let's start with our dominants. Our dominant people are doers, very decisive, task-oriented kind of folks. You are results-driven. Now, here's the way to stay motivated to stay with your goals. Dominant type personalities do best when they keep their eye on the target on the finish line. Instead of looking about what's already been done, keeping your eyes focused across that tape, that finish line tape, will help you stay motivated and on the track to success for your goal setting. Also, if you have a competitive element, and if I'm talking to D's, you're going to know, hopefully this will ring true with you. You like to have a competitive element when you're seeking your goals. Perhaps a team-based sport or some sort of bet involved, or gaming, some application for gaming. So that will also help you stay with your goals and accomplish those goals. The concept of multifinality simply means you set one goal that accomplishes several goals at the same time. Task-oriented people tend to like to do that, So for instance, you want to set a goal of being more active in 2021, And you also set a goal that you want to spend more quality time with your spouse. So if you set a goal of doing a couch to 5K with your spouse, you're accomplishing two things at once. You're getting more active and you're spending more quality time with your spouse. So that would be a successful technique for a D personality. Here's your Achilles heel. Dominant personalities tend toward extremism. What that means is you hyper-focus on one goal to the detriment of others. So if we remember that broken spoke that we saw a little bit ago, that's a really good example of a way that you might just have laser tunnel and there's some things that are falling behind on those other domains in life. Here's a really good recent example. I would bet you lunch that outgoing President Donald Trump is a D personality. Any agreement there? His outcome goal was to win re-election. He was unwilling to pivot from his outcome goal, and look where that landed him. So D personalities have to be willing to assess their goals on a measured, regular basis and be willing to adjust their course. Because if you're unwilling to adapt and change with those set goals in the beginning, there could be a whole lot of back issues happening in the background. All right, let's move on to our I's. Our I people are influential. They love to use the visual side of their brain. They're very enthusiastic. Our I's love people. They love to be around people. So crafting goals that has a wide network, a lot of social support, that's going to help you be more successful in your goal support. Because you also use the right side of your brain, you're really good at imagery. And so creating that mind's eye identity or finding a role model is something that is really beneficial to you as you set your goals. If you can find that role model of something you're trying to achieve and focus on that person and those behaviors and strategies, that will also help you. So you're going to want to use role models as a technique. Okay, here's your Achilles heel here. Our I people tend to be impulsive. You are gung-ho, you're going to jump right in and you're just going to start crafting goals and digging right in and moving along that spectrum. But here's the problem. Because I's tend to be pretty impulsive, you don't consider the workload involved, the time commitment, and the heavy lift that it might be. So I's might find themselves taking on a whole lot of goals and not achieving much in any of those goals that they set. So then that's going to set you up perhaps for failure. So by overcommitting, that's going to be a problem for our I's. This would be a great way to pare yourself down and really focus on not overcommitting. Let's move on to our S's, our steadies. Our S's tend to be more reflective. Not so much a group people person. They like smaller, more intimate environments, and they tend to be, like I said, more reflective and introverted. They play a supportive role. They're very sincere, caring type people, very sensitive. So it's really hard sometimes for S's to put themselves out there and set goals because they're worried about the outcome and not being able to make the grade, or maybe they'll put themselves on the back burner and put others before them. So S's really have to commit to themselves in self-improvement. S's also do better with singular goals. You know, the D's like the multifinality, but the S's really do better at goal achievement if they choose one goal in each domain and really focus on that. Try not to take off too much. And S's also need a higher level of accountability. And that's just the way, it's not a good thing or a bad thing, but just know that pulling someone in here to keep you accountable, such as a mentor or a trainer or some sort of online support tool, that's going to help you stay on track toward meeting your goals. S's also tend to fall short the closer they come to their goal, reaching their goal. And I'm not, there are lots of different reasons why that could be. Perhaps they put others before themselves. You're like, oh, okay, that's good enough. I'm close enough to meeting that goal. And then they'll fall off. So this is really important to go back to that accountability partner to keep you on track for that goal. And finally, let's move on to our C's, our compliance. Again, another introspective type group. You guys like a smaller setting as opposed to a big wide social network. Our C's are very measured and analytical. You guys are thinkers. You guys love the data. You like to see the numbers. You can build a spreadsheet, 7 ways to Sunday. So the data that you're going to collect and set as goals is something that's going to help keep you motivated. You also like learning-based goals. The way to stay on track for our C's, you have your path along your goal reaching, is to celebrate the wins along the way. That motivates the C's. You want to look at those small incremental wins as you're assessing your goal achievement, and that's where your data is going to come into play. So rewarding yourself along the way is a way to help keep you motivated and headed toward the finish line. Here's the problem our C's have. You guys are such thinkers that you overanalyze. So you have trouble deciding and focusing in on, oh my gosh, I have so many goals. Where do I start? How do I get started? And then C's have trouble actually getting started. So you guys would do better to have some sort of authority figure, again, a role model to sit down with and help you craft those goals and actually get you started. Sometimes it really takes an outside perspective to be able to really reel yourself in and finally focus. Any questions here? I'm going to pause for a minute and give you guys a chance to chime in or ask some questions. Go ahead and unmute. I'll wait. All right, just as I thought. Come on, PYP people. That's okay. You can save them for later. Don't be shy. Let's go ahead and move on then if you don't have any questions right now. As we move on toward getting toward a practical application, I do have to revisit some very important ingredients to setting tools. And I don't want to belabor this because you've already been through it, but setting goals does require some very key elements for very scientific reasons. The acronym is SMARTER. So of course we want to be specific about the goals that we set. We've got to be measurable about the goals that we set or we won't know if we're making any progress or not, right? Our goals need to be attainable. And I want to stop for a minute and help you understand that there's a fine balance when it comes to crafting those goals. And it's, you want them to be challenging enough that they're a reach, a stretch, a growth for you to achieve, but not so easy that it's not worth your time. So finding that balance. They certainly have to be realistic. And this is going to come back down to your self-belief. What is a realistic goal for yourself? They definitely have to be time-bound. If you don't have some sort of time parameter, that's really an open door for procrastination. And that's something that the normal human being struggles with. So we got to have time-bound. And if you're not familiar with the E and the R, we want to say the E stands for ethical. Especially as a generation coming up that really cares a lot about character and the ethical parameters of our society. Is the goal that you're setting something that defines who you are or who you want to be? I think it would serve you well to make sure that that's in alignment with those identities that you're seeking as a professional. And finally, R, we want to make sure that that goal is rewarding. Why pursue it if it isn't going to really make a difference for the amount of time that you spend? Because really goal pursuit is quite a time-consuming endeavor. So make sure, please be sure as we're crafting our goals that you have every single one of these elements in it. Okay, next we're going to talk about success strategies. These are scientifically based strategies that researchers have shown help you guys achieve goals. And I found a couple new ones and I was pretty excited about it. So I'll be glad to give these a try and see if they actually move the needle in my own area. The first thing we want to consider before we take another step toward goal setting is your mindset. I don't know if you've done any any reading on growth mindset versus fixed mindset, but this is elemental toward our growth, both professionally and personally. That growth mindset, those are your beliefs about your abilities and your perception of your qualities. That's the way you perceive yourself or your self-identity. And as Paducah Young Professionals, you tend to be more in a growth mindset stage of your life, which is fantastic. Really, ideally, we want to be in a growth mindset our entire life. We want to be open to change. We want to stretch. We want to learn. That is considered a growth mindset. And if you look at the different characteristics, there are some inner dialogues. The growth mindset says, I can try, or this might take some time, but I'm willing to put the effort in to grow and change. And a fixed mindset is a negative inner loop. I can't. I've failed at this before. I'll never accomplish that. So if you find yourself more toward that red side of the spectrum, I've got your first goal for you. And it's going to be to read this book. This is by the researcher Carol Dweck, called Mindset, New Psychology of Success. And if this is something you find yourself, even in one area of your life, finding that your self-defeating thoughts, start here. Start with your growth mindset. Now, let's tick through the different other parts of these success strategies as we move along. The first one we want to look at is identity-based. If you craft goals that are identity-based, meaning you see that person or that behavior that is where you're striving to get to, by visually using the identity-based goals, you're going to set yourself up for a higher level of success. When you think about it, having a clear visual perspective of where you want to be or where you're heading is going to help rewire your brain. Second thing we want to look at. Why isn't that advancing? It's going so well too. Sorry about that. My slides are not advancing. What would a Zoom meeting be without a hiccup? Okay, there we go. Written-based goals. There's been a lot of research that written-based goals are definitely more effective in helping you achieve your goals. In fact, 42%. That's the number that higher success level by 42%. And you know why? It's because simply writing down your goals uses both sides of your brain. If you think about your goals and visualize your goals, that's going to use the imaginative, the right side of your brain. And the act of writing down your goals is going to pull in the left side of your brain, the logical written side. So using both sides of your brain has been shown by researcher Gail Matthews to help increase your level of success. And what I love about written-based goals is once you write them down, that ink doesn't change. It stays the same. It really helps you provide some clarity on what you're trying to accomplish. Next thing, accountability. It's easy to quit when no one's looking, right? Here's the power of the running group. It's easy to run 3 miles instead of 5 if you're by yourself. It's easy to run a 10-minute mile instead of a 9-minute mile if you're by yourself. It's easy to be a quitter without accountability. So remember when we talked about our character traits earlier and the level of accountability that you have to have. You've got to have some support, whether it's a one-on-one role model or it's a large group. The next thing we want to do is craft an environment that's going to make the good choice the easy choice. Researchers call this choice architecture. You want to stage your environment to help set you up to make those choices that are trying to help you achieve those goals. And this is especially key when it comes to process goals. For instance, if you want to drink so much water a day, have your water bottle right by your side. If you don't want to spend extra money when you run out to the store, you don't want to give yourself a way to run through a drive-through, leave your wallet at home. Crafting your environment to lead you toward behaviors and strategies in those process goals are really strong indicators to help your brain be more on autopilot. Habit stacking is one of my favorite tools for changing a behavior or creating a habit. That simply means you take the new habit that you want to create and pair it with a habit that you already have. There's a formula that you have to have time and location in habit stacking, and it makes it pretty simple. Here is an example of habit stacking. And let's talk about the process, the performance, and the outcome as well. Let's say you want to take better care of your teeth because you just got back from the dentist and you had a bad checkup. You had some bleeding in your gums and you had a cavity. So you left there thinking, man, I should really take better care of my teeth. So the outcome goal would be, I want to take better care of my teeth. The performance goal leading to that would be, I want to have no bleeding the next time I go for my next tooth cleaning when they check my gum recession line. And the process goals that would lead to that would be, I can floss twice a day and I can do a peroxide rinse twice a day. So habit stacking would be, and this also includes environment, you already brush your teeth, say morning and night. And so you put that bottle of peroxide next to your toothbrush. So you know when you're brushing your teeth, you're simply marrying the peroxide washing with something you're already doing. And when you talk about environment, let's say you get those little flosser sticks and you put them in your car. You already drive to and from work twice a day. So you put the little flossers in your car and you pair the habit with flossing as you drive to work, and then you floss again when you drive away home from work. So now you've created an environment and you've habit stacked to help you lead toward the process goal of getting no bleeding the next time you go to the dentist. And finally, you're taking better care of your teeth. So see how that all works together? The next technique we have is the paper clip and or the calendar chain. I find this one pretty interesting as well. The paper clip technique is something that you would use when you have to accomplish a volume of something. For instance, you need to make 10 sales calls a day. You start with container A that has 10 paper clips in it, and every time you make a sales call, you take that paper clip and move it over to the empty basket. So you know when your paper clip full one ends up empty, you've met your goals for the day, your volume goal for the day. So that's called the paperclip method. Again, that visual in your environment is a very strong nudge toward helping you achieve that. Another one is you might want to get stronger and you want to do 100 push-ups a day. So you put 10 paper clips in there, and every time you do 10 push-ups, you move it over. The other thing we call is a calendar chain. And if you're a visual person, what this means is every time you accomplish, say, let's do your 10 sales calls or your 10 push-ups, 100 push-ups a day, you just get to color in the box in the calendar. So at the end of the month, you can look at those chains you've created on your calendar, and hopefully you will see a lot of boxes filled in. So that's a great way to measure your success, is you're striving for those process goals. Stop me if I've lost you or you have any questions. Finally, we want to look at reviewing regularly and resetting and pivoting if we have to. How bad is it when you're driving down the road and you've taken a wrong turn and it's 30 minutes until you've discovered you're way off track? So as you're reaching for those goals, you don't want to wait till 2, 3, 4 months down the road. Regular review is something that's going to set you up for success. Okay, here's where I need you to take out a piece of paper and number it 1 through 7. I should see the tops of heads. The reason I chose 7, these are going to be the domains we're going to consider, and you can break these up any way that you'd like to, is because on the review and reset process, I chose 7 because there are 7 days in a week. And if you put a domain in a certain day of the week, you're more likely to reflect on that domain on that particular day of the week. For instance, say, okay, so here's how I want you to label it. Physical, emotional, primary relationships, professional, finances, personal growth, and the last one is your social life, your secondary relationships, fun factor. So go ahead and write those down. We're going to have a little interaction, a little exercise here in just a second. And if you don't have time to finish today, that's okay, because you're still going to have that piece of paper when we're done. Now, in each of these 7 areas, I want you to write down 1 or 2 words of something that you feel like you were missing in 2020, something you feel like you want to accomplish this year. Just 1 or 2 words, quickly write those down in each of the 7 areas. No pressure. Okay, I'm just going to share my list with you just to kind of give you an idea. I just chose these different things. I want to cut down on my sugar, cut down on my stress, increase quality time with my inner circle of people. I want to do my CMEs more regularly. I'd like to be more organized with my home finances because that creates a lot of stress. I wait till January to dig through this box of paperwork at home because I figure if I still have lights and water, everything must be okay at home. So I want to be more organized there. Personal growth, I want to take a class in something that I've never done before. And then social, I did this last year. I wanted a more meaningful connection with each of my staff members, one-on-one, because sometimes as we're working with staff, some people get overlooked. So I wanted to make sure that each one of my staff members' personal connection. Okay, so let's go ahead and practice now. And I'm just going to pull out one of these that, first of all, let me go back for a second. That is the framework for your goal setting. So we'll get to that in a minute, but just to let you know, those are areas that were top of mind for you today. So I pulled out one of these from the feedback that you gave me. Somebody said, I'd like to be more organized in 2021. That is a very sweeping statement. So we're going to just work through everything that we've just covered, and I'm going to give you an example now. So be more organized is a huge endeavor. So you can see why that would feel overwhelming. We've got to pare that down. So I said, okay, let's be more organized with our paper clutter at work. Let's just pare this right down from the get-go. So that's going to impact your professional life and probably lower your stress level. So the outcome is cut down on the paperwork. So how do we set some performance goals leading to cutting down and being more organized? The first thing we want to do is say, okay, the way I'm going to measure if I'm cutting down on my paper clutter at work is I am going to commit to clean desk every Friday before I go home. So how do we set some strategies and behaviors that lead toward a clean desk every Friday? Because I'll tell you what, there's nothing worse than coming to a messy desk on Monday. That is just, it just starts your day off on the wrong foot. And then it creates an incredible amount of clutter in your mind, and we don't want to start the week like that. So if we're committing to cutting down and being more organized at work, let's talk about some ways some processes and strategies. The first thing I want to touch on, and I said this in my time management seminar, is return on time investment. If you are absolutely 100% serious about being more organized at work, you're just going to have to know it's going to be a solid investment of time on the front end. But the beauty of that is the return on your time in the long run is going to save you time. That's a win all day long. Invest that time on the front end because it's going to be a heavy lift to get you going in the right direction. Number 2 is you've got to have a scanner and a filing system. There is nothing more liberating than scanning a piece of paper and throwing it away. In fact, this was one of my goals about I don't know, 5 years ago. I have never regretted it. I got Neat Desk and I love throwing papers away. I'm much more organized because technology is your friend. It's a searchable tool and you don't have to spend gobs amount of time looking for something. You just search it in the toolbar. You can schedule Pomodoros. What that is you just schedule a time, maybe once a day before you go to lunch. You're going to take 15 minutes, scan the things that need to be scanned, put things away. Taking those small bites along the way is going to get you out of the office faster on Clean Desk Friday. And finally, you want a habit stack. Every time you leave, every time you do your Pomodoro, every time you leave your desk clean, color in the calendar. So those are some ways to meet your outcome goals there. All right, does somebody want to chime in and ask a question about this or need some help with one of their goals?
Hey, Terry, this is Patrick. Sorry, I couldn't find the raise hand feature.
That's okay.
When I saw that scanner up there, I wanted to scream yes, because when I kind of switched careers from engineer over to sales. So my security blanket was keeping stuff cluttered on my desk all the time. And then one day I was like, if I can scan this in, put it in a folder. And when I did that, I felt like I got done with 2 weeks worth of work. I mean, it was great.
Yeah, imagine your blood pressure just dropping. And until you've done it, and it's like I said, it's painful to get there, but it's certainly worth the effort once you get there. So from recovering paper hoarders, I think we can agree that that's a good investment of your time.
Yeah.
Any other questions before we close this out?
Terry, here's a question in the chat. How do you get refocused and stay motivated when you get off track?
Okay, this comes back down to your accountability and your measurement. And we talked about motivational ways according to your personality type. For instance, if you're a D, you're going to be best focusing on your finish line and creating that environment and putting those visuals in your way to help you keep your eye on that target. And that accountability is just huge. You ask someone to give you a kick in the pants when you need it and to help push you along that curve. So it's super easy to lose that. So finding someone to help you along the way, or a group of people, or a bet, or some sort of app to help you with that is definitely the way to do that. And I'm happy to talk with you offline to maybe sit down and noodle that out with you.
Hey, Terry, this is Jason Straub. Kind of to go back to the beginning of your program, and you talked about those different personalities, the DISC method and all that. Do you think it's possible for somebody to have, one personality in their professional goals and then go home and kind of operate in a different manner? Like, for example, professionally, you may be that enthusiastic person and everything, and then you go home and you're like, oh, I want to procrastinate on working out or any of those physical goals that you may have set. Do you have any advice for maybe setting goals if you have different types of personalities like that?
I do think that it's not just a super easy, the shoe fits perfectly. And it really comes down to the type of goal you're trying to set and figuring out, well, where's the tension here? Where's the pushback? And if you can really drill down in what is keeping you from taking those steps in the right direction, that's going to be the key to helping figure that out, your way out of that maze. So yes, you can be kind of two different types of personalities, but I would venture to say it's more one personality with some different hiccups in a different domain. You might have a tougher time in the physical domain and an easier time in the professional domain. But again, we've got to look at all of those because one affects the other. Any more questions? Okay, so as we close this out, I think that this is a great way to really reflect on your goal setting endeavors as we move on. One of my favorite educators, both spiritually and business wise, is Andy Stanley. And one of the questions he asks in his Better Decisions, Fewer Regrets is, what's the story I want to tell in the rearview mirror? So looking at this year or this season in your life, thinking in 2022 and you're looking in the rearview mirror, what story do you want to tell about this season? Do you want to tell a story of a truth and authenticity and something you're proud of? Or do you want to tell a version of the truth and you're filling in the holes with maybe some things that didn't actually happen or hiding some inabilities? So when you think about the story you want to tell, that's really going to help you craft some things and some areas of intentionality in your life. And I find that thinking about the future with your eye on the present and looking at the future, that's really going to help be very impactful in those decisions that you're making as we're setting forth. So what I want you to do here in just a minute is I want you to take out, it's going to probably take you maybe about an hour. You're going to need to schedule that hour in for your goal setting homework. That's your homework. So we're going to put that on a calendar. So 1 week from today, I would love for you to be able to say, I took those 7 domains and I crafted smarter goals in each of those domains. You don't have to change the world. You just have to move the ball down the field. So you can know that a week from now, I'm going to send you out a form. And one of the questions is, did you get those 7 domains covered in the last week? You've got to schedule that in or the week's going to be here and gone in no time. I really want to commend you on taking the time and investing this time today to help improve yourself both personally and professionally. I think that that really says a lot about your desire to grow as a professional. I think it also shows that you see value in our chamber and Paducah Young Professionals. I continue daily to be very thankful for Sandra and her team and our chamber and the way we're all able to come together to raise the level of quality of living in our community, to help bring others along. I want you to know that I'm a resource. I am an email, a text. Text is faster than phone call to get a hold of me. I am so happy to meet with you and brainstorm on your goal setting. Just reach out to me. Again, that's another value that we offer as our chamber and as a business professional in our community. That just really puts fuel in my tank to be able to help people. So with that, I'm going to close out and know that I'm going to bug you in a week, and I will look forward to any follow-up questions that you have.